Hi there, so today I'm talking about the German guideline for endometriosis. So I just changed my plan, so I'll do a post about trauma next week. So I worked it out here. So these are my notes, and I've read this guideline for months. It took me months, so it was not easy to read. There were a lot of words I did not know and which I had to look up, and which I wanted to look up because I wanted to understand it. So to start, I'm reading it just up now, and because I want you to do a post which is really detailed. Because I could do a post in 10 minutes and tell you this, but it feels like that would be not fair, because I think you have the right to know what's in there and what's good, what's bad, etc. I mean, of course, you are all free to read it, but that's over 130 pages long. Yeah, no fun to read that. So it's a S2K guideline. It's consensus-based. It was confirmed in August 20. It's until August 23, so until next year. It might be extended in a period for a period of time for 5 years. It's the version 1.0. It was in cooperation with the AWMF. It's a working group of scientific medical societies. And if the 3 organizations who published this guideline, if they want to update or renew this guideline, the AWMF needs to approve it. And this guideline is just based on literature research, and the oldest literature they used was one from 1982. So really old, so really up to date. Not really, right? I'll start with the points which I think are bad, and afterwards I'll tell you about the good points of this guideline. This guideline was without, e.g. following orgs. One for anesthesiology was missing, and also one for gastroenterology. Then I think it's highly negative that doctors and members having conflict of interests, there were no consequences for this guideline. So to bring up this guideline, there were a lot of members, and they built groups, working groups, to work on this guideline, and yeah. So and of course the members working on this guideline, they are also working together or for pharmacy companies, or they are doctors prescribing hormone therapies, and this I think it's highly negative. So for example, there is Mr. Peter M. Fair, and there are companies like Bayer and Gideon Richter, and the guidelines saw that he has the conflict of interest for hormone therapy, but then they write that there is just a low relevance and there are no consequences to this guideline. And for example, there is Mr. Michael Müller, and there's the company Bayer, and that's funny. The guideline saw no conflict of interest at all. So it's Bayer again, right? So, and further on, the guideline saw no relevance to the guideline of his Bayer relation, and there were no consequences as well. So that's one thing. Another thing, a bad thing I think about this guideline is on page 56. They are talking about like the cells of endometriosis. They are using the word endometrial, which is related to the endometrium. They are talking about endometrial cells, etc. They are using this word endometrial to describe endometriosis, which is completely wrong, I think so. And then that was so, whoa, awful, on the same page, so completely confusing. Then they bring it right, correctly. They are talking about endometrial-like cells, etc. So they are really using these two words, endometrial-like. Of course, they use it in German, but yeah. And they are also using the word endometrioid. Endometrioid. Yeah, I hope I pronounced it correctly. And this means endometrial-like. So, in my opinion, in my words, honestly, obviously, they are not knowing what they are writing about. You really need to decide. You really need to decide if you think that endometrial cells are endometriosis. Sorry, you need to decide whether endometriosis cells are endometrial, as they wrote, as I just said, or if they are endometrial-like. That's a huge difference. And they describe endometriosis with the two words, just as I said. This is just a pain in the neck. This is awful. So I hope I made it clear. Otherwise, you just write a comment and yeah, because I could do a better post in my mother tongue, in German, but yeah, it's really important that I do it in English so that the accounts abroad also have the chance to see what's going on here. And then they talked about ablation versus excision surgery, and they are seeing no difference at all. So I hope I'm pronouncing the word correctly. The guideline says ablation versus and excision surgery are equivalent. So they are talking about that the effects or the outcome of ablation and excision are the same. And as we all shall know, ablation is really a bad technique, and you need to prefer excision. So to get the endometriosis lesions and cells by its root, right? And then another really awful thing for me was they are saying that endometriosis is a gynecological disease, which is wrong. Endometriosis occurs in the or can occur in the whole body. It also had been found in the brain, the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, the bowel, bladder, everywhere, diaphragm. So it cannot be a gynecological disease. But of course, and that was also funny, They were naming areas like bowel and kidneys. But nonetheless, they are writing endometriosis is a gynecological disease, which is not true. So, and yeah, what is concerning pain, they are mostly writing about period pain. I mean, of course, period pain might be a symptom of endometriosis, but it's not the only symptom. It cannot be the only symptom. You might have bowel irritations or whatsoever. You might have bladder problems. So period pain cannot be the only symptom to name for endometriosis. Or like sexual intercourse. These are not the only symptoms to name when it comes to endometriosis. Yeah, so like I just said, they talked about period pain and pain of the lower abdomen. And then they even refer to the guideline for chronic pelvic pain in women. Wow, endometriosis is not just about women having endometriosis. It's not just women, but this is obviously not clear to them. Okay. And yeah, and to finish this one lastly, this period pain, they write on page 69 that their aim is to prevent periods. Okay, then I think to myself, why had there been a woman abroad born without an uterus? Wow, and nonetheless she had endometriosis. Tja. And then of course, they are pushing hormones hardcore, really, really heavily. They are pushing hormones like whatsoever. So they are doing this without doing research in hormone receptors, like it's done for cancer. And they just rarely mention the side effects of hormones. So there are a lot side effects for hormones. And I had so huge side effects from these hormones, like depression, etc. Bone problems I had also, I still have. Yeah, and they are just mention it by the way. So yeah. And then there was quite a funny thing. For adolescents with remaining pain, etc., they really, honestly, they write to change the hormone drug or take the used hormone drug in a long-term cycle. And then they write for adolescents, first take hormones and then think or use or do the surgery. This both is on the page 112. And as I just mentioned a bit, but this is quite funny, on page 127, they cite or they name the determination of hormone receptors for cancer. But the guideline for endometriosis does not come to the conclusion to push research into hormone receptors for endometriosis. No. Okay, I think it's not good. They should be research into hormone receptors, because then it just might make somehow sense to use hormone therapy. Because yeah, no. Yeah, and then on page 77, that was quite funny as well. They name studies which say that concerning pain, there is they see no difference between doing a surgery or using hormones. No one shall be better than the other one. Yeah. Hang on, I'll just have a look. Oh, and then that was pain in the neck. I've never seen such bad thing. So when it comes to depressions, which come together quite often with endometriosis. So, but, and sometimes or quite often in Germany, antidepressants are used against depressions. So drugs. But this guideline is not talking about using the drugs, antidepressants against depressions, but they are talking about using it for chronic recurring pain in the lower abdomen. They are saying concerning recurring chronic pain in the lower abdomen that in general doctors shall just recommend to try antidepressants, as that might improve the quality of life of the patient. It's on page 124. I could not believe what I saw. Really, it's awful. So yeah. And another thing is that this guideline, German guideline for endometriosis, they don't criticize the ICD-10. So the ICD is an abbreviation for International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems. And the German version for endometriosis concerning this ICD-10, so it starts on N.80, I think so, and it's just short. And look abroad, what is there for endometriosis in the ICD-10? It's really long, and the German it's just a short part. So I'm highly critical about that ICD-10 in Germany. But the guideline does not criticize this ICD-10 and these short short text there, because they are referring to the ICD-10, and the guideline is explaining endometriosis according to the points on the ICD-10. They are doing it step by step relating to the ICD-10, explaining endometriosis. Wow. And the guideline does not mention, as I just might have said, I think I said it above, they do not mention endometriosis in the brain, the jaw, bones, nerves, etc. And the ICD-10, of course, not as well. The guideline, then another fact, the guideline just sees a small, or is it called few or low, percent for endometriosis in the kidneys. They say it's 4%. Bowel shall be 10%. Yeah. And this guideline, it's my opinion, it does not show endometriosis as a whole body disease, which is true. Then, is it in the end or at the end? So they define questions for research. What shall be done in Germany? What points shall be looked at and shall be done research at? And this guideline defines questions, what to research, what to do research in. But, and this is, for me, it's the most important thing, the genetic thing for endometriosis, the genetic aspect. They do only one question for genetic concerning biomarkers. I hope it's pronounced in English. One question. They have a lot of questions which research shall be done in endometriosis or for endometriosis, and only one that might have this genetic aspect. This is the most important aspect for me because we need to understand endometriosis. Yeah. So I finished these bad worst points. That was enough, right? Now are the good points. The good point is that they see assume a delay the diagnosis of endometriosis for approximately 10 years. And this is my opinion as well. I think for me it had been 10 years plus, 10 to 15 years. So I think the guideline might be right there. Then they see endometriosis as a chronic disease, which is true. And they name accumulation in families. So if a first family member has endometriosis, there might be a higher risk to have it as well. So naming this on page 48, they are showing, it's my words, that there might be a genetic predisposition for endometriosis. And another things which are good as well, they are, of course, they are talking about the RASRM score of 1996, and of course as well they are naming the ancien classification from 2011, and they are being critical about it, and they see as well a weakness of both scores. For example, that there is no representation of the pain. Yeah, I think it's good. At least they've been a little bit critical, right? And to say it in my words as well, or in addition, I think that the RASRM score is from 1996. So hang on, now, if I did it correctly, this score is 26 years old, right? Yeah, it's 26 years old and we still use it. Wow. And the ancien classification is 11 years old. This is too old for me. You need to update it. You need to work on that. But of course, yeah. It had not been done until now. And another good thing is in the guideline, I saw in the guideline, is they are writing about that biopsy is important to diagnose endometriosis, which is definitely true. And then they are saying that negative imaging scans and negative physical examination don't exclude endometriosis. This is good of them. Positive. Another topic of them is that there shall, so if you come to a doctor and describe your symptoms, etc., or if you go to an endometriosis expert, he shall, that's now what the guideline is writing about, then this doctor shall do a complex anamnese, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So he shall look in detail. For example, he shall look on your at your body mass index, on your family story, what I just mentioned above, that there might be a higher risk for endometriosis if a first family member has endometriosis. This doctor shall look for stress as well. So that's one complex anamnese, which the doctor shall do. And they mentioned other facts as well, but yeah, these are just examples. But this is not done in Germany. So the endometriosis guideline, another good thing is that it says that there is no causal therapy to endometriosis, which is true. And they are writing about that when it comes to surgery, there shall be a multidisciplinary team if there are different areas of the body with endometriosis, like bladder, bowel, then there shall definitely be a multidisciplinary team. This is on page 78. And another good thing is they mention pain therapy, page 132. And now I come to the conclusion of this, the guideline versus reality. My third part. What I just mentioned, that doctors, if you go to a doctor with your symptoms, or you already are diagnosed with endometriosis and you go to a new doctor, then this doctor shall definitely do a complex anamnese and look in detail on your symptoms, etc. This, I never heard about that on here in Germany. No one, really, I've been to an odyssey of doctors, no one asked me, hey, have you got a family member with endometriosis, for example? So no one asked me this. No one. Then, like I just mentioned, the multidisciplinary team. So my endometriosis surgery took 8 hours. But for my surgery, there was a multidisciplinary team. But I heard it so often, especially here in Germany, that gyns are doing bowel surgery or bladder surgeries, for example. So there's not always a multidisciplinary team. And this pain therapy, which this guideline mentioned, I'm quite good connected, and I hear it sometimes that a endometriosis patient gets pain therapy, but not always. Yeah. So, and about the, by the way, the facts I think are good of this guideline. I just write it down in my text because I'm nearly to 30 minutes and I don't know if Instagram does more than 30 minutes. So have a good day. That was it. Bye bye.